Hi, welcome to Give Me the Bible, where God's Word speaks for itself. In the last video, we talked about thinking deeper about sin and realizing that sin is not just a breaking of God's law, but is also a breaking of God's heart. And what that does is that makes sin much more personal. That makes sin much more real and tangible. It makes sin not just a breaking of a rule in a book, but it makes sin a breaking of God's heart and God's trust of us, and really kind of a denial of God in our lives, that we're choosing something else. We're choosing a different master, a different Lord, and we're cheating on the true God that we serve with our sin. And so what that's going to do is that's going to help us avoid sin at all costs. When we understand what sin really is in the Bible and how bad it really is, it's gonna basically motivate us to stay as far away from sin as possible. I really like the account in Genesis chapter 39. Turn there with me, Genesis 39. Recall that in Genesis, Joseph's brothers were jealous of him because their father loved Joseph more. He was the favorite, and so they sold Joseph into slavery, and Joseph ends up in Egypt, and he ends up in a man named Potiphar's house. And Potiphar was an Egyptian officer, and in the account we learn that while Potiphar was away, Potiphar's wife was very attracted to Joseph, and she kept making sexual advances toward him and wanting him to have relations with her, and he just kept refusing, and she was just relentlessly going after him. Notice what it says, beginning in verse 6 of Genesis 39. Genesis 39, verse 6. So he left everything he owned in Joseph's charge, and with him there he did not concern himself with anything except the food which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and it came about after these events that his master's wife looked with desire at Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has put all that he owns in my charge. There is no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God?" I really like Joseph's answer there for why he was not going to sleep with Potiphar's wife. Notice he didn't say, well, I can't do this because, hey, Potiphar might walk in on us and Potiphar might catch us, and then I'd really be in trouble. He didn't say that. He didn't say, well, what if you get pregnant and then we've got a child and now we've got to explain that to Potiphar and he's going to know it wasn't me and we're just going to get caught. Again, none of those answers were given by Joseph. Joseph says, no, Potiphar trusts me, and more importantly, God trusts me. How could I do this and sin against him? And that's just such a great view of sin, that next time we're tempted to sin, that we would think to ourselves, how could we do this to God? Not, well, if I do this, it's going to make me feel really miserable, or if I do this, I might get caught, or if I do this, I may get in trouble down the road. No, if I do this, God's going to know, and God's going to be hurt. This is what leads Jesus, I think, to be so radical in Matthew chapter 5 about sin and getting rid of sin in our life. He says in Matthew 5, in verse 29, if your right eye makes you stumble or sin, tear it out and throw it far from you. For it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. For it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Jesus is very radical. He's saying that our eyes in our hands might actually cause us to sin. And Jesus says, whatever causes you to sin, whatever is helping to contribute to sin in your life, you just get rid of it. Doesn't matter how valuable it is, doesn't matter how much you like it, because, hey, our hands and our eyes are pretty valuable. Jesus is saying it's far more valuable to you to save your soul and not sin against God. Now, I'll just make a note. I do think Jesus is using hyperbole to make a point, But so many times we're so quick to read these verses and say, well, Jesus isn't being literal. He doesn't really want us to mutilate ourselves. And when we just kind of go right into that passage with that kind of explanation, we're taking the power right out of Jesus' point. His point is very powerful, that sin is that serious, that we should be willing to even lose our hand or our eye before committing sin against God. And I hope that that's helpful. And Lord willing, I'll see you next time.